Well, hey, good morning, everyone. How we doing today? Oh, man, I love when we get to watch baptisms. That's one of my favorite things, and it just reminds me we get to be here. We get to be a part of this. I'm so thankful for that. In case we haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, my name's Seth. I would love the chance to get to say hi to you after the service if I haven't met you before. And I want to start off today by telling you about one of my favorite memories from childhood, and it involved the 4th of July in our small town. I grew up in a small town, and every year at the 4th of July, there was a street fair, and they turned our main street into a midway, and it went for about 4 days surrounding the 4th. And it was such an exciting time as kids. And they were awesome at engaging everybody. So there was a bandstand for the parents. So the parents would listen to different groups play every day. And in the evenings, they had the rides set up. Remember the rides like the Gravitron? Anybody remember the Gravitron? Anybody throw up on the Gravitron? Anybody? A few? Yeah, okay. And that's the worst, isn't it, right? Because it goes flying all over. If you don't know what the Gravitron is, you should Google that and take a look at it. There were the games, like the dart throwing game or the ping pong ball throwing game, and every kid walked away with a goldfish that died by the time you made it to the car. And there was the food, the funnel cakes, the elephant ears. I love fair food, the lemonade. And then one year in particular, there was something new we hadn't seen before, and it was so exciting. It was the over and under table. Anybody know what the over and under table is? It's a game of odds. And so they set up this table, and on the table there are these different sections where you could put some money on over, you could put some money on under, and you could put some money on 7. And so what they would do is they would roll 2 dice. Whoever's leading the game would drop these 2 giant dice through a chute, and you'd see a number, and if it was over 7 and you had your money on over, you won. If it was under 7, you had your money on under, you won. You doubled your money, and it was usually quarters that people would bet. I think you could only do like up to $1 or something. And so you doubled your money, and if it landed on 7 and you were right, you actually tripled your money. And the best part was, unlike Vegas, you didn't have to be 18 to play. They let kids, I know, I think they changed it after a year, but they let kids this first year play, and this was from the local Sertoma. They were giving money to the community, right? So it's all good. And so it was so exciting. Now, for those of you who grew up in an era where gasoline is like $3 a gallon, like it is now, doubling 25 cents to 50 cents doesn't sound like a whole lot. But back when I was a kid 30 years ago, right? I mean, gas was under a gallon. You could get 3 candy bars for $1. Micro machines. I mean, you could just envision all the things you could spend your newfound money on. And it was so exciting, and it sucked you in. My brother and I, we both got sucked into the over and under table. There was something thrilling about it because there's something thrilling about getting rich, isn't there? In fact, the idea of getting rich is just exciting. It's exciting. How many of you in here, how many of you would love to be rich? Oh, come on. I mean, this is disappointing. I can't. Do you want to be poor? I mean, how many of you want to be poor? Nobody, if you raise your hand, you're lying, right? I mean, we know that's not true. Yeah. I mean, have you ever felt discontent with what you have in life? Have you ever kind of stressed about if you have enough to pay the bills or enough to go on vacation or pay for Christmas or whatever it is? Have you ever just felt like you needed more and you're not sure? I mean, you're feeling anxious about it. I mean, wouldn't it be great to be rich? And I mean, rich people, surely they're anxiety-free. Surely they're not worried about vacations. They're not worried about how they're going to pay for this or that or their new car or their new house or whatever it is. I mean, it would just be so great. And so here's the thing. I think there are some secrets that rich people know that can help us, that can apply to us. Now this is important to know, as much as they might be related to and connected to money, they're ultimately not about money. And to prove that, because I'm so confident in these principles, we're actually going to give you money on your way out today. I'm going to give you, yeah, I know, yeah, there we go. You guys should be like the contestants in The Price is Right, right? Screaming, woohoo, all right, yeah. I mean, we are going to send every one of you away with an envelope full of money. And no, it's not going to be your own money that you have to put in there, okay? So, I mean, this is so good. And if you're watching online, we're glad that you're with us and you're wondering, how do I get my envelope? Well, email church@icommunitychurch.com by 5 o'clock tomorrow, and we will Venmo you some money, okay? So 5 o'clock tomorrow, which is September 20th, you have till end of business tomorrow, send us an email. We will send you money. That's how confident, and even if you're in middle school, if you're in high school, everybody 6th grade and up, you get to walk away with an envelope of money. But here's the caveat. You have to pay attention. Okay, so no sleeping, no falling asleep. We're going to lock you in the room. You have to say yes. It's like a timeshare sales sort of thing. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding about that part. But I promise you are going to walk away with an envelope of money, but you have to stick around for it. So if you get up and leave early, you're going to miss out. Okay, so today, because this is kind of our introduction of this new series, Secrets Rich People Know, we're going to talk about two secrets today. And here's the first one. Secret number one is that even though not everyone gets to be wealthy, everyone can choose to be rich. I felt the deflation in the room. And my guess is the reason why it feels that way is because when you heard me say rich, in your mind you heard the word wealthy. I mean, you're thinking about money and you're thinking about, but remember I said it's connected to money, but it's not necessarily about money. In fact, here's the thing. We already know how to be wealthy, which is why we don't really need to talk about it. Because if you live in the United States, which I'm guessing pretty much everyone in the room does, probably 98% or 99% of us in the room, we actually are rich already. In fact, I'm going to blow your mind here for just a second. As you've heard, you need to have $1 million to retire. Maybe it's $2 million or whatever. If you make $33,000 a year or more, and that's $16 an hour, over a 30-year time period, did you know you're going to see $1 million? You're going to see $1 million flow through your bank account, through your wallet or however it is that you keep money. $1 million. Who's excited, right? Yeah, I didn't feel it there. Or how about this? This is even better. If you make just $50,000 a year, it'll only take you 20 years. 20 years to make $1 million. And that'll put you in the top 1.5% of wage earners in the world. You're a top 1.5%er. Congratulations. You're not excited. Okay, if you make $67,000 or more a year, you're in the top 1%. It'll just take you 15 years to have your $1 million. In fact, you may be on million number 2 at this point. Nobody's excited. Why is that? Because during that same time period, whether it's 30 years or 20 years or 15 years, you've had some bills, right? You've had some bills. You've had to pay for housing. You've had to pay for medical. You've had to figure out how to drive a car and pay for gas and, put gas in your car. It basically doubles the value these days. You have to pay for insurance. You've got school, whether it's for yourself or your kids. You've got retirement. You've got food. You've got clothing. You've got sports and travel, this and that, and stuff for your kids and vacations. And, of course, Uncle Sam always gets his portion. And before you know it, $1 million is gone like that, right? I mean, it just kind of disappears. In fact, for many people who see $1 million, many will get to the end of their money before they get to the end of the month. Many will get to the end of the money before they get to the end of the month. I know it'll come up there. There we go. Some will spend it. Some will spend it long before they have it, and then they'll pay interest on it. It'll come up, I'm sure. Computer maybe playing games with us today. Sometimes it slows down. Here's the next one. Many will worry about the future, and they'll wonder if they have enough of it. And then here's the last one. The last one is that some couples are going to fight over it. They're going to fight over it, and some will even divorce over how that money gets spent. And the truth is, for all of us, it doesn't really feel like $1 million, does it? As much as we'd like to think it is, it just doesn't feel like $1 million. In fact, most of us, we put our heads on the pillow at night, we feel some kind of stress about money, we feel some kind of anxiety about money. We worry sometimes about money. Why is that? Why is that? I mean, what do you think about if I ask you, are you wealthy? Don't our minds kind of immediately go to our bills? They immediately go to the money that we owe, whether it's a mortgage on a house or a payment on a car or a boat or a camper or whatever, or the vacation you'd like to take but can't quite afford, or the junk you'd like to purchase but you haven't had the financial bandwidth yet to be able to do that. All the things you want to spend money on, or your kids have college, or retirement's coming and you're not sure you're ready to retire. We just don't feel very wealthy because we want more. We want more. How much does it take to make people happy? Interestingly enough, John D. Rockefeller, who at one point in time was one of the richest people in the world, was asked that question, how much money does a man have to make in order to be happy? And you know what his answer was? just a little bit more. From one of the richest men in the history of the world, just a little bit more. If I just had a little bit more, I'd finally have enough. Now, maybe by American standards, you're not actually wealthy by our standards, right? It's possible that maybe your income could be higher. But let me just kind of give you some ideas of things that wealthy people do, and you can put yourself up against this standard. There's some interesting things wealthy people do. See, wealthy people, sometimes they'll take a product that they already have, and they'll go out and buy a new one, not because their old one doesn't work anymore, but because they want something new. Like Apple, this last week, they had a whole big thing about their new iPhone that's coming out, which is kind of exciting, and I watched part of it, or read about it, and I was like, oh man, that'd be cool. And I already have a phone that works, but I might want to go out and replace that phone because it's got a better camera. I mean, does my current phone not work? Of course it works. What's the difference? Well, the new one's faster, and it has more memory, and it's got a better camera. And so I may trade it in for something new. Wealthy people, sometimes they'll drive a car onto a lot, and they'll drive off with a new car. They'll say, well, did your old car not work? No, it worked. I drove it onto the lot. Maybe it wasn't working as well as I'd like it to, but it worked. Well, why'd you get a new car? Well, because my car smells like Cheerios, and the new one smells like cowhide. And there's a big difference between those two, right? I don't want to smell the dried Cheerios anymore, but bad news, your new one might smell like dried Cheerios again real soon. Wealthy people, I know none of you can relate to this, but sometimes wealthy people will open a closet full of clothes and look at it and say to themselves, I have nothing to wear. Well, what about those shorts, or what about that shirt or that dress or pants, whatever? Well, yeah, but I need something new. I mean, and then they'll go out and buy something new. That's something that wealthy people do sometimes. Wealthy people will take houses that are perfect. I mean, there's no problem with it. Everything's functioning right. And they'll say, I wish it were a different color. I wish I had different flooring. I would love to have new appliances because my current oven burns everything. Might be the person who's cooking. I don't know. But, how can I improve it? How can I make it better? And so wealthy people will actually go out and replace things that currently work with new things that also work, but just because they want to. See, the thing is, most of us laugh because we can relate to all those. And so the problem isn't really a wealth problem. We all kind of know how to be wealthy. The problem is we have a rich problem. We don't always know how to be rich, and being wealthy and being rich, they're not actually the same thing. See, the problem with wealthy people is sometimes they look around and they see what other people have and what other people are doing, and they have this tendency to compare. We talk about this sometimes, how we're so good at comparing our blooper reels with other people's highlight reels. And we see the vacations they take, we see the new cars they buy, we see the clothes that they wear, and we think, well, shoot, I'd like to be able to do that. Or, I know my vacation, I had to put it on a credit card, and now I've got 6 months or 9 months that I'm paying it off. And we don't see what's going on behind the scenes in other people. We just see the part that they display on Facebook for us. And so wealthy people, we just have this tendency to compare. And it's when we compare that we convince ourselves that we don't actually have enough. But let me just say it again. Rich people understand this, that even though not everybody gets to be wealthy, everyone can choose to be rich. Even though not everyone gets to be wealthy, everyone can choose to be rich. Not everyone has the privilege of living in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, where if you make $32,000 a year, which is the majority of our country or more, you're in the top 5% of wage earners in the world. If you lived in Ghana, it would take you 200 years to earn that much money. And yet most Americans, we earn it within 365 days or less. So we Americans, we have a special privilege. You know what our privilege is? Americans get to be wealthy and rich. We get to be wealthy and rich. And here's the clincher, and this is really foundational to the series. It's in these words right here. Get to. Get to. We don't have to. We get to. We get to be. In fact, you have to make a decision. Rich is a choice. Nobody can force you into being rich. Nobody can twist your arm and make you rich. Rich is a choice that you and I have the opportunity to make. But you know what wealthy is? Wealthy is simply other factors. Wealthy is other factors. Wealthy is growing up in a certain country where the standard of living is awfully high. Wealthy is growing up into a family that encourages you to pursue education. Wealthy is, having opportunities dropped in your lap. Sometimes wealthy is working hard. Wealthy it has all kinds of things to do with all kinds of other factors. Rich, however, rich is a choice. The biggest factor to being rich is a choice. You know the biggest factor keeping you from being rich? It's this word right here. It's discontentment. And honestly, who can blame us Americans for being discontent? We live in a capitalist culture where we are advertised at every single place we go. And the goal of advertisers is to give you perceived discontentment. Now, I'm not pointing a finger at advertisers because everybody has to eat and live indoors, so that's not necessarily a bad thing. But my point is that their whole goal is to convince you that you need to buy whatever products that they're selling, and if you don't buy their products, then they don't make money, and then they can't pay their bills, and the cycle just kind of continues. But the challenge for us is that if we're not careful, we will never choose to be rich because we're so focused on having enough. And the problem is enough is a moving target. Enough is a moving target that we will never reach. In fact, here's secret number 2. No amount of wealth will make you rich as long as you're discontent. It doesn't matter how much you make. As long as you're discontent, as long as there's something in you that says, I need more, you will never actually have the privilege of being rich. Which is why Timothy, when he wrote much of our New Testament, he wrote a letter to Paul, and he gave some very important instructions. And so here are the instructions that he gave. He said, godliness with contentment. There's our word. Godliness with contentment is great gain. Which is his way of saying, look, if we can get to the point of believing that there's enough. Go back, please. If you can get to the point of believing that you and I have enough, if we can shut down that voice in our heads that says, I need more, I want more, I don't have enough yet, if we can shut it down and shut it up and get to the point where we can say, I don't need more opportunities, I don't need more experiences, my kids have enough, they don't need more toys, they don't need more junk. If we can get to the point where we actually can say, I have enough, that will be a good thing. We'll understand, can we go back to that other scripture? We'll understand that we have enough, that contentment, we'll go back in just a second. We'll understand contentment because we don't have enough, or we'll have enough. That's the point. Now, Paul wrote this. Paul, he was imprisoned for multiple years. He was flogged multiple times. He was stoned nearly to death and left for dead. And we're talking about with rocks, not with pot. I mean, they threw rocks at him. They thought he was dead. They walked away. And yet he was able to come to the point where he says, I have enough. I have enough. I have enough. See, godliness and contentment are more about being confident in God's ability to continue to provide for you and meet you where you are than about anything else. Continuing on, he says this. He says, for we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it, which is true. We're all born naked, right? And then when they put clothes on us when we die, we're not taking them with us. We brought nothing with us. We can take nothing out of it, which means that the physical things we have, they have temporary value, right? I mean, they just don't last forever. So he goes on and he says this. He says, but if we have food and clothing, he says, we will be content with that. If we have food and clothing, we'll be content with that. That'll be enough. Those are kind of our basic needs. Now, a couple weeks ago, Hurricane Ida back in Louisiana, and then it traveled up to New York and New Jersey, and we saw the devastating flood. I mean, it was just tragic when you see people whose homes are destroyed, whose lifestyles and lives are in many respects destroyed. But if they're still living, if they're still wearing clothes, if they still are eating, truth is, they will be okay, right? I mean, ultimately, they'll be okay. I'm not saying it's not tragic. I'm not saying it's not difficult, but they'll be okay. They have enough. Paul says, we can face whatever circumstances come our way if we can get to the point where we say, we have what we need. He continues on. He says, those who want to get rich. Now, when he says get rich, he's talking about those who want to have excessive wealth, who want to have more than what everyone else has in their culture. He says, those who want to get rich, they actually fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. He says, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Now, here's the thing. When we read this, if you're at all like me, I'm kind of like, well, I'd love to try the temptation. I mean, just go ahead and fill my bank account with all kinds of resources and let me just try it because I think I could withstand that one. I think I'm strong enough. I think we'd make it. But the fact is, Paul talks about it's a temptation and it's actually a trap. It's a trap. And the thing about a trap, you probably know this, is that you don't know you're in one until it's too late. Right? Until your time's up and there's nowhere else you can go until you're stuck. I had a conversation a while back with somebody who was talking to me about how they wanted to be generous. And I asked the question, I said, well, okay, how are you being generous now? And that question was met with the response of, well, we don't really know where the economy's going, and we're not sure how business is it could take a downturn, or, there are some signs in the horizon that it might be bad and whatever else. And so we're not really being generous right now because we just don't know what the future holds. Okay. Well, here's the thing. The pandemic has taught us something really important. It's taught us that uncertainty is always in existence. Uncertainty is unavoidable. It was always around, we just didn't know it. And now we become aware of it, and when we become aware of uncertainty, it rises this tension within us, and we just wonder, will we have enough? Will we ever, what's going to happen? Is the next shoe going to fall? Whatever. But the truth is, that's always been there, as evidenced by the fact that you didn't expect the pandemic to come, right? There it was. We just never know what the future's going to hold. And so when we fall into the trap of saying, well, I can't read the tea leaves, I don't know what the future's going to do, and so I'm just going to withhold, that's a trap. It's a trap. And we fall into it. And the love of money isn't the root of all evil, but it's the root of all kinds of evil. And it's a trap. And it begins to consume us. And it actually gets in the way of the way we live our lives. It gets in the way of relationships. There are times where and this could be your story, it could be somebody you know, or maybe you're not even aware of it, but there are times when people feel like they're competing for someone else's money. In a family relationship, you may not know it, your family may feel like they are competing for your money. Because all you do is you think about where your investments are doing or what they're doing, or you're working extra hours to try and make a little bit more, and you're telling yourself and you're telling them, well, it's all for you. I want you to be able to do this and go to college and pay off this, and I want you to be set in case I die, and I want to make sure. And they're just saying, we just want you. We don't want your money. We want you. But you've fallen into a trap. See, rich people know this. They know that the desire to acquire more and more wealth, it's just a trap, and you're not going to see it coming. It's a trap in our relationship with God. Sometimes the desire for more, it gets in our relationship with God because God says, here's an opportunity. I want you to invest in it. I want you to give to that. And you're thinking, well, I don't know if we have enough yet. And I don't know if we're going to have enough to retire. And I don't know if we're going to have enough for this. Or I don't know if we're going to be able to send kids to college or whatever it is. And we begin convincing ourselves that we don't have enough. And I'm just telling you, as long as you don't have enough, you will always need more. Always. And no amount of more will get you to the place of enough. It is a trap. The same person that I was sitting with who was talking to me about how they wanted to be generous, they talked about how they had just paid millions of dollars into their company and paid off all kinds of debt and stuff, but it's a trap because they're convinced, I don't know what the future's going to hold. I don't know where it's going. This is significant, Paul says. He goes on, he says this, he says, some people who are eager for money, that means they just keep going after it, they want more and more and more of it, they've wandered from the faith and they've actually pierced themselves with many griefs. Now this sounds excessive, but I'm just telling you, the history of Christianity would confirm this. Here's an example, Judas. You all know who Judas is. Even if you didn't grow up in church, you probably heard of Judas. Judas was the one guy who betrayed Jesus for 30 silver coins. And at some point in time, he thought it was a good idea to betray his leader for 30 silver coins. Now, he went back and regretted it later, but it was too late, and he ended up hanging himself. But what's fascinating is Jesus was sitting around, the Last Supper with his disciples. He looked at the disciples and he said, one of you is going to betray me. And they didn't all turn their eyes to Judas and be like, you weasel, we knew it. We knew you were a rotten, They started saying, is it me? Is it me? I mean, nobody expected Judas. He just fell into the trap and he pierced himself with many griefs. In the book of Acts, there's a couple, Ananias and Sapphira, who sold some land, and you can read about it on your own, but they fell into the trap of money and lying about how much they had and their resources. It's a trap. It's a trap. Be on guard. Be on guard. Now, there's a group of us in the room, and you may fall into this, where maybe you're thinking to yourself, or you're kind of arguing with me in your mind, and like, Seth, are you saying we shouldn't work hard and we shouldn't, try to advance in our work or whatever else? And I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying be careful. Be careful, because when you start feeling like a tug, when God prompts you to do something, and you start feeling a tug of, well, I don't know if I have enough yet, you should be aware that you're falling into a trap. You're falling into a trap. Be aware. Be aware. There's nothing wrong with producing. There's nothing wrong with earning more. Wealth isn't evil. Money isn't evil. But the love of it can be. The love of it is a root of all kinds of evils. And if you hesitate at the opportunities, don't allow wealth to get in the way. Don't allow wealth to get in the way of choosing to be rich, because you may be dangerously close. You may be about to fall into a trap that you are not even aware of. Now think about this with me for just a second, because Paul wrote these words 2,000 years ago, where the world he wrote these into was far less wealthy than what we Americans are. And he wrote this to a pastor. I'm just saying, pastors aren't at the top of the food chain as it comes to income. No complaints, I'm just saying. So you can just imagine 2,000 years ago, he's writing this to a pastor. So how much more does this apply to us today? In fact, his words that he speaks next, they're so powerful. Here's what he says. He says, but you, man of God, what's this word right here? Flee. Now, there wasn't very much excitement in your response there, so I want you to say it again. This time with a little more oomph. I'm going to read the sentence. When we get there, just yell it out. But you, man of God, flee. That was good. I'm going to let Greensburg know that you guys did better than they did when we go back, because that was way more energy than they had. But you, man of God, flee from all this. Now, the Greek word for flee, it's kind of a fun word. It's the word fugo. You want to say it with me? Ready? Fugo. Fugo. It means run away. Run away, like Monty Python with the little rabbit bunny. And they're like, this thing is dangerous. Get away from this. Run away, run away. Nobody watches Monty Python. Okay, but get as far away from this as possible. Flee from the trap. And instead, here's what you do. And instead pursue righteousness and godliness and faith and love and endurance and gentleness. See, the trap for more is so strong. We have to be careful. We have to flee from it. We have to run away from it and instead replace that desire with the pursuit of these things. Righteousness, godliness. Let's highlight those. Righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. Pursue the things of God to the point where those permeate our lives. See, here's the thing. When we come to Jesus, one of the things I love about baptism videos is we just hear stories of people coming to Jesus, and we do it because we look at our lives and we say, there's something not right in my life, and I can't figure it out. I need help. I need a Savior. We come because our relationships are messed up. We come because work is messed up. We come because we need help, and we cry at Jesus' feet and we say, please rescue me. But what's funny is when it comes to the area of money and wealth, most of us say, I don't need your help with this, God. I've got this part figured out. You can help me with my relationships. You can help me with work. You can help me with all these other things, but I don't need you here. I've got this figured out. But what Paul says is, look, you need to begin pursuing these things: righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. You need to make the things of God part of your everyday life, not just part of your Sunday mornings. Or not just part of your Bible reading time or your prayer time, that these become part of who you are. Do you know how we flee the trap of more? And the God of money? We flee the trap of more by seeing that enough is a moving target, that we will never get there. In fact, I said this kind of earlier, but a capitalistic culture, do you know that a capitalism, I'm not against capitalism, it's raised more people out of poverty than probably any other financial system. I'm not down on capitalism, do not mishear me. But capitalism is not built for anybody to have enough. Capitalism is built for everybody to want more. That's what keeps the engine turning. If we have enough, we won't buy. If we don't buy, people won't make money. We need to make people want more. That's the perceived discontentment. We have a bent toward dissatisfaction. That's just capitalism. So how do we become satisfied? How do we fight against that? How do we flee from it? I think it's the rich people, they make a bold statement. They make the statement that I don't need more. I have enough. And they begin, rather than focusing on more, focusing on pursuing righteousness, pursuing godliness and faith and love and endurance. And do you know how I convince myself that I have enough? I actually give money away. Sounds counterintuitive. But here's why. Because rich people give money away because they know that they have enough. Rich people can give money away because they know they have enough. See, if you're discontent, then you need everything you have and more. If you're discontent, you'll never give more away because you don't have enough yet. The way we convince ourselves that we have enough is we take a portion of what we have and we choose to be rich with it. We choose to say, I have enough. Now, for me, I just think it's important to choose a percentage. I think it's important to choose a percentage for a number of reasons, and I'll explain why here in just a minute. Because if you put $5, in an offering or give $5 to a charity of your, whatever, that may seem like a lot. And if you make $50 a week, that is a lot. But if you're making $500 or $1,000 or $5,000 a week, $50 or $5, it's not a whole lot. The Old Testament teaches about a tithe, and we don't really talk about tithes here. Tithe means 10%. Jesus never said you need to tithe. I'm not trying to, it's easy math, and I don't think it's a bad target to go for. So if you give 10%, if you make $10, 10% of $10 is $1. And if you make $10 a week, that's a lot. But again, if you make $50,000 a year, 10% is $5,000. There's actually an inverse relationship. As you look across the board in our country, there's an inverse relationship by the amount of money people make and how generous they become. Because as we make more, we find more stuff to fill enough up with, and we give less away. And so when you hear, $5,000, that's a lot of money. Or I make $100,000, I'm going to give $10,000 away. That's a lot of money. $200,000, $20,000 away. That's a whole lot of money that I could spend to get more stuff and have enough. See, the way we avoid the trap is that we tell ourselves, I'm going to give this percent away, and it's going to be enough. Because the truth is as our income grows, so does our appetite. It's true, isn't it? Don't you spend more than you spent 10, 15 years ago when you made less money? Why is that? Because our appetites grow. And so we want to choose to help you be rich. We want to convince you that you have enough, so we're going to give you a little bit extra. In fact, as I mentioned, as you go out today, we have a special gift for you. It's an envelope. Who's excited for the envelope? Yeah. And it's not just an envelope. There's two gifts. There's money inside the envelope. Now, there are $2 in here. And $2 may not seem like a lot to you, but it's more than what you had when you walked in. Right? You're going to walk out today with more than you came in with, which means you have extra. You walked in with enough. You're going to walk out with what? More than enough. And here's what I want you to do with this money. because this is God's money, so you don't pocket it. I'm going to guilt you with it a little bit. Don't pocket it, and don't put it back in the offering box. We want you to take this envelope, stick it in your purse, stick it in your wallet. If you need to fold it up, stick it in your car, your backpack, whatever it is. Again, 6th grade and older, you're going to walk away with an envelope. And we want you to ask God what he wants you to do with his money. Because you've got extra now. You've got more than enough. And we want you to spend some time asking God throughout this coming week, God, what do you want me to do with this extra? How do you want me to be rich with this? Whether it's buying somebody's coffee, $2, it's not, a ton of money, but it'll do something. You could buy somebody's coffee, you could toss it onto their groceries, you could buy them a, Coke, whatever it is that you want to do. Maybe you feel like you've got some other extra that you want to put to it. You can do that if you want. That's totally up to you. But what I want to ask you to do is take the money out of the envelope. I want you to keep the envelope because we're going to use this for other parts of the series. So don't give the envelope away, just give the money away. And we want to hear what you do with it. We need to be encouraged to know what we can do when we have more than enough. You know what? I was thinking about this today. This wasn't really part of what I was planning on saying, but if the Christians in our country gave 10% of their income away, I think we could end all of our social programs here in the nation. We wouldn't have to depend on government to support people. We would help people find jobs and work hard and earn what they can, and we'd support them when they fall short. Because we all have more than enough. And what we'd love for you to do is hashtag, choose rich CC, post that, tag our church in it, hashtag. We want to hear what you do. We want to hear what God leads you to do with the resources that are being entrusted into your care. Because again, you're going to walk out of here with more than enough. One last thing before we go. I'm just curious, how many of you remember your first paycheck? Anybody remember getting that first pay? I mean, it's so exciting. When I was a high school student, I started working at it's called Victoria's Cafe and Diner, and I was a server. I made $2.01 an hour plus tips. And the cool thing about being a server is you actually walk away with cash at the end. When people pay cash, you walked away with cash. And I remember walking away feeling so rich because I didn't have anything I needed to spend my money on. I just had money. I had more than enough. And then I remember my first job as kind of an adult. I got hired as a youth pastor, and I remember thinking, they're paying me how much to do this? I would pay them to let me do it. I mean, it was so exciting. And then over time, as what happens to all of us, we fall into this trap of more. And we think, well, I'd like to get that, and I'd like to move there, and very quickly, enough is gone. And we need more. And remember when you get that pay raise? When you get a pay raise and you think to yourself, oh, that's so exciting. Now I have more because you had enough before and now you have more than enough and you feel rich, don't you? But how quickly we just kind of fill that up and wait till the next pay raise. And I mean, it's just this ongoing cycle. But I'm just telling you, rich people know they don't need more to be rich. Rich people know they can choose to be rich with what they have. Rich people understand that appetite for more, it is an insatiable appetite. So my friends, what if we could choose to teach ourselves to be content? That is one of the secrets rich people know. And we're going to pick up back here next week. I can't wait to hear your stories on social media. Come share them with us. We'd love to hear about it, what you do with the more that you are given today. And let me just pray for us as we close our time. Heavenly Father, you have blessed us so incredibly by virtue of living in this country where we have so much wealth. We have so much wealth, we have just lost our minds about how much wealth we have. You have given us so much. Help us to recognize that. Help us to learn, help me to learn to be content. This is not just a message for them in the room, it's for me too. Help us to learn to be content. And to know that we have enough. Help us to be generous. Help us to see the more that we have that you have so generously given to us. And help us choose to be rich. Father, give each one of us wisdom to know what we need to do with what we've heard today. And then, Lord, give us the courage to do it. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.